is with great pleasure for me to introduce Paula Williams, President and Chief Executive Officer of CPS Energy. Paula has more than 30 years of leadership experience in San Antonio, including Regional Controller for Time Warner, VP of Finance for Luby's, and during her 16 years at CPS, she's held a variety of executive positions. In addition to her role at CPS Energy, Paula wears many hats. She presently serves on several committees and boards. She's received numerous awards over the years, and she mentors numerous people inside and outside of CPS Energy, from college students to vice presidents. She has an associate's degree in fine arts, a BBA in accounting, as well as a finance and accounting MBA. She's a certified public accountant and a chartered global management accountant. She is married and has 2 daughters, and we're excited to have her here today. I'm excited to hear from her and just hear all about, her career. So we'll go ahead and get started. So, hi, Paula.
Right.
Thanks for joining us. So can you tell us a little bit about your career path and your journey?
Well, it's windy. I'd say that. I didn't start out in the energy business. Didn't think much about ERCOT. I was an accountant, and that was mostly because I think at first, no one in my family had graduated from college. My dad tried to go to college when he had a young family. I was still in school. And it just didn't work out in terms of my mother's ability to manage the household and balance all of that. So he stopped going to school. I was kind of thinking, what would I want to do? I didn't know any professionals. I didn't know any engineers, or seriously, I didn't know any accountants. The only professionals I really knew were doctors. But in my high school, they started a new program, and that program was a bookkeeping class. And back then that was a career, to be a bookkeeper. I thought about being an accountant, and my dad kind of forewarned me, that's kind of too stressful. You got to balance to the penny. He said, you probably want to do something else. That's why I have this fine arts associate degree. I went and studied history and dance and music and art and all those things. And I took accounting as an elective. When I did that, I really realized how much I liked it, how much I liked business, and I just kind of stuck with it and moved on for my associates to get my undergrad. And I did a lot of other things. I was an SEC specialist in terms of audit. I had a lot of different types of clients. Again, nothing in the energy industry, something more down the lines of cable communications, theater operations, things like that. What I really realized, though, is I really liked business. When you're an accountant, you think oftentimes about whether or not you want to open your own practice. And I thought oftentimes I would want to do that. But then I thought, that sole proprietor type focus really wasn't what I liked. What I really like are teams. I like diversity of thought. I like interacting. I like understanding the business model, translating decisions to financial outcomes. And that's kind of how I started my journey. And my journey is eclectic. I went from audit to theater operations. Norman Lear, who was a big producer decades ago, had a movie theater operations company. Also, he did some production. He made one of my most favorite movies called The Princess Bride. I worked for him for a little while. And then ultimately that operations in San Antonio closed down and moved to the West Coast. And I didn't want to move. I wanted to stay here. I love Texas. I love San Antonio. Decided to go into cable. That was one of my clients. I worked for the cable company here in San Antonio. There have been lots of different movements. I think now they're charter. Did that for probably my longest stint other than CPS Energy. I went to food service. I worked for Luby's for a while in their corporate office. And I was on my way to Houston to work for Luby's, and got a phone call to come interview at the energy company. And I remember thinking, well, this is an amazing thing because they hardly ever advertise. That's kind of the way we were. And if they didn't really want you unless you had come in right out of college, that was kind of the previous culture set. And I didn't really think that I was going to get in. They interviewed me 4 times, and I almost said I had enough. But ultimately, at the very end, the CFO hired me to be a controller, and I came to the industry, not knowing much at all, and had so much to learn. But I found it extremely fascinating. I found energy really fascinating. Municipals are fortunate in Texas because you get to generate the power, you get to be in the transmission business and distribution business, and then care for customers. We're long in our generation. We have a lot of excess generation purchased by this community and our customers here, and so we're both in the retail business and we're in the wholesale business. But I just like the whole what I thought was exciting. I mean, I think when I first came in, it was a slower perspective. You kind of watched people historically, and they would tell you this is how things work. I've been in this business going on 16 years, and now the dynamics are really moving differently. The quote unquote disruption in the future, and the opportunities for smart cities, and the transition to different types of energy and distributed generation and customer preferences. It's extremely exciting to me. And I'm really happy where I am now. But I would tell you, like, a lot of people early in their careers will say, how did you do it and what was your path? Listening to that story, I hope everybody who's joining us today would say, I don't want to do it that way. That was just a eclectic way to expand my horizons and ultimately just keep trying new things. And I consider myself extremely fortunate that I ended up where I am. So that's kind of my journey to get to CPS Energy.
Well, I think that's a very, I don't think that path is necessarily a way that you should avoid. I think that, it sounds to me like you have a lot of experience, and you've had, had your hands in a few things. So I think that's good. You can bring that diverse background to where you're at now and in your position now. So very interesting. Thank you. Can you tell us about some of the challenges that you've had to overcome through the years? What kind of risks did you have to take? Someone once told me sometimes you have to take a step back to step forward. And so looking back, is there something that you would have done differently, or, did you have to take any sort of risks, challenges? What kind of challenges did you have?
I think, look, a lot of people, I'll start at the end and kind of work back. Like I was, we created this process at CPS Energy because people weren't getting promoted because management was so busy that they wouldn't think about promoting. And so I actually changed the dynamic. This was about, I'd say 14 years ago. And I said, an employee can put their name in the hat and they can say, I'm ready to be promoted. We created a framework, and if they could prove that they met these objectives, and they were competent in their existing role, and they were reaching and able to perform the next level, they could make their case. Excuse me. Can you all see me? There you go. Sorry, that's what happens when you're not keen on your keyboard. And so it was a very effective process at first, except we made it simple. We said a cover page. We wanted to make sure that people can write and articulate something that they believed in. Why wouldn't you believe in your own promotion? You had a very straightforward template. The whole package should be no more than 4 pages. But all of a sudden, over the years, the packages started getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I looked at one, and it was probably 25 pages. And when the person did their submission, they actually didn't get promoted that year. And they came in and talked to me. They had a problem with the process and said, look at my package. My package is so thorough. And I looked at it, I said, it's got a lot of stuff in it, but as far as the stretch that we need, not quite there yet, but don't give up, right? And so she was it was a young lady, and she said she was very disappointed, and she said, you know, you just don't understand. Emotionally, I really want this to happen, and everything that's happened to you has been extremely successful, and you've never been disappointed. And I was blown away that I give the impression that I've never been disappointed. And she and I had a conversation. I said, actually, I have failed so many times in my career and feel like those failures, you know, not getting promoted, not getting the job. One time I took a role on where I had two jobs. I was a controller, and I wanted to be considered for the vice president role of finance. And I did two jobs for 9 months, and I didn't get it. And 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 my new boss that came in he resented the fact that I was there, and he assumed because I didn't get it, I would be resentful. So I had to deal with all of these like perceptions of me and the natural psychology sometimes of being having a new boss and all those kind of things. But for every single one of those issues that I had, it made me better. So in the case of where I had a new boss who he just kept giving me a really hard time. And he even told me one time, he said, people like you because they feel sorry for you because you didn't get the role. And so accordingly, there's kind of this overinflated view of you. And I was blown away. And I said, wow, I don't feel like I have to be a jerk and be resentful because I didn't get it. And you just assume I'm frustrated. And I said, but I'm going to ask you a question. Tell me one time where I really demonstrated you can't trust me. Tell me once. And so he sat there for a minute and he couldn't come up with one thing. And I said, I may be unusual, but I may not be, right? Why don't you just give me a chance? Interestingly, what that taught me is, you got to talk things out and you got to put things on the table, and things don't always go your way, but you're always going to have a boss. And I wasn't ready. I had to sit there and really, really confess to myself I wasn't as experienced as him. And I just had to prove my value, not in a resentful way, in a way that we had a really good conversation. In the end, he and I became really good friends. And go over to his house, we'd have dinner, our spouses got along. And again, it also told me that relationships had to be built and they had to be bilateral. But that happened over and over again. And where I had these challenges, one time my predecessor told me, he goes, trust but verify, Paula, Reagan says, and that is exactly what you need to do. And the one time I didn't check something, and we had a big failure with it. And so all of those things that have happened to me, I think have built my character to realize that it is not, you don't just get handed things. It's work. Results matter. You have to be conscientious. You have to have leadership systems, and you can come back from the ashes of failure a much stronger and better person. And so I tell everybody all the time, it really is your challenges that actually build your character. Because look at this. Here we are in COVID. Who would have ever thought that? But if work was always about when sun was shining and there were no challenges, then they wouldn't be called work. It'd be called fun. You want someone who can handle that pressure. And while it's not preferred, you want someone who's optimistic about working through an issue together like a team. Again, that's why I think I'm attracted to teams, because the power of the team is so much more than an individual just trying to fight their way through one challenge or another. So those are the general takeaway is, yes, I had challenges and risks, and maybe just one other dynamic of that. I always tell the story because people tend to be curious about it. I've had situations where people, quite frankly, because I'm an African American woman, underestimate me. and discount me. And the most extreme example I had is when I was CFO of this organization. Every once in a while, I go to New York and we'd issue bonds, and you have to show up in Wall Street, and sometimes I'd be at a different hotel than my team. I show up by myself. I show up early, and I was disappointed, but flipped it, that many people, not knowing who I was, wouldn't even say hello because they just assumed, right? And I mean, it wasn't just being African American. Part of it was being a woman. I mean, because there are it's male predominantly staffed at every single level. There are more and more women, but still women are in the minority. And I just I had hit that head on. And I remember on multiple occasions walking into rooms and people not even saying hello, don't know who I am. All of a sudden, the person who's working directly to issue our bonds comes in and says, "Hey, this is Paula Gold-Williams. She's a CFO. We're going to sell $500 million of her bonds today. I want to make sure you know who she is." Eyes get big. Then people go, "Oh, I was so busy. I didn't see you earlier." All these things. But in the end, I wasn't mad. I don't hate them. I don't feel disadvantaged. I feel that I really have a way to see a landscape much more clearly because people don't have to pretend all the time. I mean, they're not pretending when you walk in and they don't know who you are. That also tells me for the one thing I do, though, is I make sure that they don't have that impact on my team, right? That's one thing. But if I think that someone isn't going to treat my team fairly, man or woman, whatever minority, if I know that's your character, then I'm going to make sure that my people are informed and ready to go. But it also tells me, like, okay, this is just a business deal. This isn't play or fun. This is a business deal. This person is doing business. And again, that's what I want. And so it makes me charge harder. It makes me more clear about what I want. I have convictions about what I think is the focus and not the focus. And it takes some of the crazy emotion out of it, when you actually can deal with someone objectively. And again, those were hard lessons that I learned, but I think all of them were in a good way.
Thank you. That was good. I'm glad you touched on, the fact that, some of the experience you had in a male dominant industry, because obviously in this industry it is male dominant. So I can only imagine some of the challenges that you had to face with that. But it's inspiring to know that, you got through that and that you took positive, you took something positive from it to, and utilized it in your career. So thank you.
You're welcome.
I just want to give to everyone that we will again have question and hopefully we'll have enough time for question and answers at the end. So please submit your questions through the chat box so we can go through those at the end of the call or end of the presentation. So my next question, Paula, is you established the People First vision at CPS. Can you explain what that means and tell us about your leadership style? And if you have any informal list of must not do's in terms of leadership.
Absolutely. But, as you can tell, everything is a journey for me. So, speaking of failure, when I first started working for my predecessor, he was an experienced investor-owned utility top executive that came to work at the municipal utility strategically because he felt like, and many times when you're in the investor-owned world, some of the focus around quarterly earnings and things like that were constraining. And in the municipal world, you can take a bit longer view, or you can take a longer view. And so he decided that he was going to come to a smaller company, so to speak, with lots of, capability and thinking. And when I first started working for him, I would tell you I was probably an underdeveloped CFO and an underdeveloped executive. I think I was in the mainstream. I don't think I was noticeably out of whack, but I really didn't have the values embedded about risk taking and challenges and really understood the business enough. So he was pretty hard on me. We oftentimes joke about how many things that he said. So to tie it back, so I had a failure and it was bad, and he was coaching me and gave me, I think he gave me 4 formal coaching sessions, and that was it. And he walked up to me, or I walked up to him one day, and I was talking, and he looked at me, and I was still in purgatory. So he says, "Hey, your head just got knocked off your shoulders, and it is still rolling down the hallway. What I suggest is that you run after it, pick it up, put it on your shoulders, and go back to work." And so, actually that was a gift because ultimately, if he would have told me, "Paula, you are not long for this world." That's his comment. When he says you are not long for this world, that means you have, you're done. You're not going to make it probably about through the end of the week. I would tell you, I have a word. My word is, I don't have anything else for you. And that is so meaningful because usually I invest a lot of time and effort into people, a lot more than the average CEO, because I understand that people can modify their behaviors because I'm a walking testament of it. So anyway, because he didn't fire me that day, I thought, okay, I'll go pick up my shoulder, my head and put it on the shoulders. And then I sat there and I thought, well, what's wrong, right? And I thought about, I said, look, here's my problem. I'm looking at the business through my eyes. I said, I think my role is big as CFO. I said, but if I sat there and looked at the business through my boss's eyes, it's not just the financial world. It's everything that has to do with operations, generation, distribution, transmission. It's the disruption that's coming. It's the safety culture, because in this business, you better keep your people safe. It's people and culture. It's communications. It's, you can go on and on and on. And I really finally said to myself, that was my problem. I said to him, I'm trying real hard. I know it isn't going well, but I'm trying real hard. And he said, interesting, but not relevant. And so he gave me like a lot of tough responses, which, typically, freak people out. I mean, isn't that rude or negative? No, he was telling me results matter. And so at first, of course, I was there, and then I just started like looking at things through his eyes. I started trying to anticipate where he was headed. I aligned my effort, and then I started thinking about the whole organization, trying to be helpful, and then made sure that the financial work that I was doing was much more comprehensive and much more focused on where decisions were being made. So at first he told me, I didn't know if he could be a good CFO, but and then he said, I don't know if you really ever want to be on the operations side of the house. It's too difficult. It's very stressful. He goes, I don't recommend it. He goes, you finally got the CFO role down. Don't try to do the operations piece because it would probably be too much. And that was kind of like his 3rd year into his 5-year reign. Then he finally decided to leave. He went and did something. He did a global venture. But on the way out the door, he said, excuse me, can you all see me? On the way out the door, he said to me, you know what, Paula, I finally decided that you don't have to be me. You don't have to be an operations person. You don't have to be an engineer. You don't have to do it the way I do it. So what you need to do is figure out, because I think you've got all the leadership that you need. You could take on this company. I took on the interim role. He goes, but because you're going to do it differently, I can't tell you what you're going to do. Matter of fact, I shouldn't. You figure it out. Figure out what you're passionate about. Figure out how you're going to lead. Figure out what prisms are you going to use in systems to be effective. And he left on a Friday, and over the weekend, I sat there and thought about it. And then it was clear to me, I mean, I'm a financial person. I'm very analytical. I like numbers. I'm an extroverted introvert. But over the years, my most satisfying aspect of my job has been people. coaching people, helping people, interacting with people, learning from them, the exponential benefit of two ideas coming together and being a better idea. And it's because of people. And I said, well, that's how I've got to lead. I've got to lead making sure that people know that all the $11 billion in infrastructure doesn't matter if you don't have people running those assets and taking care of them. And every single person matters. And that's how I came up with it over the weekend. I will say I built it on top of this view of where he cautioned me about people's safety. The scariest thing for a CEO is to lose an employee, particularly in an industrial type accident. And so we had a very big focus on safety first, zero harm, all those things. And as I thought about that and thought about my leadership, that's where people first came from. And it's a business trinity, as I call it. It is the focus on your customers, the understanding of your community and the support of that, and then taking care of your employees. That's the business trinity: community, customers, and employees. And that's as simple as that. But it was funny because when I first took over and I told people that, I mean, it sounds good and it seems practical. It's one of those things that almost is too simple, right? So I remember, again, in this field where people are so analytical and you have so many people running around, I remember somebody walked up to me and said, "Can you give me a definition of people first?" And I looked at them and I said, "Really? Do you need a definition?" And they go, "Well," and they go, "I looked it up." And I go, "Why would you do that?" And they go, I just want to be able to have that specific definition that you have. I said, "Well, here's some input. It's not going to be in the dictionary. It's pretty intuitive." I said, "So look, if I had started out and said people last, it's all about numbers and it's all about profits and it's all about so and so." I said, "How does that make you feel?" And they said, "That makes me feel not good." And I go, "Well, that feeling is the complete opposite of people first." And the third thing I said was, it's not about, I've been in organizations where CEOs, go, "Give me the 6 pillars of, our core values," or "Give me the specific definition and what is our mission and our vision." I don't care about any of that. I said, "I want you to internalize and personalize that. What does it mean to you to put people first? What does it mean to you to be a people first team member?" It has to come from the heart. It has to come from the emotional belief that you believe that people matter. And if you can't articulate that, there's a more fundamental challenge here, but I bet you can. And so after we had to do it for about 2 years, when then people go, "Oh, I got it." I have one senior executive that's been with me for 3 years, Felicia Etheridge. She's about to retire, and she has been over our corporate communications and customer engagement area. And she said, "Paula, it's really sophisticated simplicity. It's just so simple, and we just all have to accept that it's not an algorithm or a calculation or whatever, and that is the core." And I have been more pleased with when we do some really tough stuff, and then we finally say, well, if it's not benefiting customers, community, or employees, we're going to put it at the bottom of the list. We're not going to do it at all because it doesn't really matter. And so I've been focused on it for about 6 years now, and it still feels fresh. It still feels real, and it doesn't feel old. Particularly now, like, again, here we are at COVID. And if you're not thinking about people's safety, if you're not thinking about how do you make sure that 3,000 people in San Antonio can serve 2 million people and contribute to the Texas power grid, that takes a focus to really think about that and know that you're essential to supporting the community, and know that you're there waiting for the economy to come back, and you want to help businesses come back and people to get jobs and all those things. And so that, it still works for me. It still makes me passionate. It makes me get up in the morning every day and feel really good about just life. And so that's where it came from.
Interesting. I like that people first vision, and I think it's important that people know that they are valuable and they bring where, and it takes as they say, it takes all of us at for us all to do our jobs and do them effectively, and so that's a good I like that vision. Well, you mentioned COVID-19, and as we all know, it's impacted the world and placed us all in positions of uncertainty. Can you tell us about how it has impacted CPS and our industry as a whole? I mean, you started to touch on it a little.
Well, there aren't many. Well, you know what? I don't know if there's anything not impacted. Unfortunately, I think the majority of people and businesses have been impacted. Just huge monumental perspectives. I would say though, for us, we were monitoring COVID-19 in January fairly intensely. I have back to our focus on safety. Our chief security, safety, and gas solutions officer, he and I have worked together for multiple years now. We have been thinking about these challenges around pandemics, SARS, and all the things that had happened before. We created a big pandemic program. We also refined our business continuity plan. We felt ready. I'd say a year ago, we felt really ready. We had signed an MOU, and it felt like it said you have access to the reserves for vaccines when they come through. You've got clearance to be essential and get some of the first vaccines that come out. And we thought that what you needed to do is just be on top of things. So our philosophy also is to think global, act local. So we had a group that had been watching it in 2019, and then in January we were noticing this momentum, and so we were already prepping. I mean, daily conversations about, wow, this thing seems different. In February, the media noticed that we had already started social distancing. We weren't shaking hands anymore. We had sanitizer all over our conference rooms. We were careful, and that what are you doing? People said, what do you think? Are you all going to walk around in hazmat suits? I said, well, no, we're just trying to be thoughtful, and we're trying to be careful and preventative. I mean, that's the most important. Can you prevent getting sick? That was February, and then everybody, saw what happened, the global velocity of this issue, and the whole fact that what we know now is, so you have rights to a reserve of vaccines. If they don't exist, what do you have? And so we have been really, really focused on, what does that mean? And so we broke our company up into three groups. Our colors are blue, orange, and white. And so our blue team is the team of people that actually have to be out in the field. They are still out there. Car hit pole, they're going to go do the repair. There's still construction happening. There's still developments happening. That's at least a good thing. And so work really still needs to happen. And the interesting thing is, now that more people are at home waiting for the economy to come back, we get even more phone calls from people who say, hey, my power is out and there's no storm, but it still doesn't stop people from knocking poles down. So that's the blue team. And I am in the blue team. That's why I'm in the office. And my direct reports are in the blue team. We look at this through the prism of our blue team, the ones that have to be out there. And we have a white team. These are the people who have to come into the office on a regular basis, that they're doing it because they need to be behind the firewall, or they need a control sequence that makes you have to still work with people. And then our orange team are the people who have gone home and they're working predominantly from home. We sent about 1,100 people home in a week. And we prepped and changed all of our views on technologies. If you had asked me, if you put a gun to my head a month and a half ago and say use WebEx, I wouldn't be on the call right now because I didn't know what I was doing. Now I know a whole lot more about WebEx and Zoom and all of these new technologies. But we ramped up really, really quick. But it wasn't just about the processes, it was about, again, people and being people. They wanted to know more. They were concerned. They didn't know whether they were overreacting or underreacting. We have put as many as 150 people on quarantine, self-quarantine. And this happens because someone is exposed and then they came to work and then we have to find out who they all worked with. We've had that happen all over our system here. Knock on wood, we haven't actually had any appearance of it, although we think we're partly lucky, but we're also paranoid. We've had a lot of near misses. We've had to use a minimum of 14 days in our quarantine perspective, and we talk about it every single day. And we're interacting, and every once in a while, I'll just call an employee and I'll just say, "How are you doing?" And I want our management team and executives, call your employees and ask how they're doing, whether on the blue team, the white team, or the orange team. There's a lot of anxiety. It's the COVID. It's the fact that people are now having to teach their kids. It's the fact that they're stressed out about the kids' education and future, what will happen. There's just so much going on. That said, energy is an essential service, and we still got to do the things that are caring. You got to slow the business down as much as you can, but you still got to make sure that everything is happening. And that's a real balance. Still thinking about every single one of your 3,100 people who are all critical and essential to making sure that power is wielded and harnessed and delivered still affordably and still effectively resilient, all those things. On top of, I guess, the last piece I'll say on the COVID, and if you have any more questions about it. So we knew right away that it was going to be problematic. We have two programs, though, that every year we invoke. One is we suspend disconnects, and we do it every August, and we do it every December. August because it's too hot to put someone's health in jeopardy. In December because it's the holidays, and the last thing we want to do is ruin someone's holidays. Even with that, we still have one of the lowest write-off ratios, bad debt ratios, utilities just do. But our ability to partner with our customers has been, I think, critical. It's no secret that San Antonio's economics are very challenging. We have a lot of people who are at or below poverty level. And so the ability to help people and not put that kind of stress on disconnects with them is what we normally do. Also, our biggest customer program is called our payment plan. And in the payment plan, if somebody's having difficulty, again, instead of cutting them off, we say, hey, why don't you go to installments? Why don't you pay us part? And then over several months, we can get that back balance gone. And then we're going to continue to work with you. We don't stop people. They can get on that payment plan multiple times a year if they need it, because we understand things happen to folks. So when the COVID started revving up in March, the council said CPS Energy and the water company had to think about it. And we said, sold, done. We're going to go ahead and suspend disconnects, and we're going to work with customers on payment plans, and we're going to market that. And then we also incent them to call us. The collection process still occurs in the background. People still get bills. Collection still happens. They get notices. They're just not getting the physical disconnect. But we say, call us. We'll get you on a payment plan, and we'll take off any late fees. We won't apply them. All we want you to do is to be safe. All we want you to do is to be able to get through this. And as a community, San Antonio has always been, it has always been connected. And so this ability for us to do it has been, I think, critical to really easing some fears that some folks have to try to get through it. And so, but we're not done. And I know our mayor, Mayor Nirenberg, who's on our board, and Judge Nelson Wolf, that he's the judge of the county, have been working really hard to get people information and give a status about the spread in the community, which has been an interesting journey to watch. They know the economy needs to come back. The governor has been working to start to get the economy of all of Texas to come back. That said, I think we're going to be watchful, and we're going to be supportive. We're still out here every day and working, but the phrase I use is that we're going to be first in on social distancing and last out. And that is mostly, again, to make sure that we're still able to provide power. So we still tell our people, go about your business, but wear masks. I've got my face covering here. I'm not going to stop wearing it. I mean, the key is we need an effective vaccine. And until then, we have to be focused on prevention. Be careful. Don't just assume this thing isn't serious. Don't assume that it's a hoax. It's real. And so this is kind of how we've seen and viewed COVID. And it has had a devastating impact across the globe, one in which I feel this too shall pass, but nobody knows exactly how and when, and nobody knows the right recipe. And federal government's trying, and the state governments are trying, and the local governments are trying. And it's just going to take a lot of effort to do that. At the same time, we're going to stay steady. We're going to do our job. We're going to focus on the core of what we do in terms of providing power. So that's kind of where we are right now.
That seems like to be the thing that is being shown in the industry. At least I know for ERCOT, we've gotten a lot of support from management and just to continue we're essential workers. I mean, we're out there and we have to continue to do what is required to make sure that, we're reliable and we have power to our customers. So that's good to know. Again, if you guys have any questions, please send us a question through the chat. Those are the talking points that we had come up with for our speaker. So I first want to say just thank you. Thank you for sharing some of your story. It's been an inspiration for me and hopefully, the people that are on the call. I've enjoyed it. I've gotten some good information from you, so I appreciate it. We do have a question that came in.
Okay.
So, this is to Paula's earlier comment about being underestimated, particularly in a male-dominated industry. Did you ever get frustrated or emotionally drained? And if so, what helped you get through some of those biases that you experienced in your career?
Oh, absolutely. I would say I got emotionally drained, but not to the point where it paralyzed me. I will say, look, when I was a brand new accountant and I was I didn't know what I didn't know, and I was working as an auditor. I remember asking my senior, that was your boss, your senior, I said, I really don't know if I understand this audit thing. When will I know what I'm doing? And he goes, he looked at me, very, very brilliant guy. He looked at me and said, you'll know when you know. And I looked at him and I said, not helpful. But he was kind of poetically correct. And but I remember that early on feeling, probably all the way through my mid-career, being worried about failure, being worried about being the only woman in the room, what people thought. And mostly, I had young daughters and two wage earner family, and I thought, man, if I get fired, that puts a lot on our family. We may have challenges making it, and so it made me not always feel comfortable about the risk I was taking, or I go home at night and go, man, like I said, my boss, or my direct boss for this one, like, he hasn't told me you're not long for this role yet, but what if he tells me that tomorrow? I mean, I remember being continually worried about that kind of stuff. And interestingly, I would say that it paralyzes you in some way. It makes you obsessive. It pulls in your emotions. And every once in a while, I'll talk to. I've seen men cry at work. I mean, this is not. I have, but I've also seen women, really emotionally. Just it's everything's below the surface, and it just all boils out. And whether it's a man or a woman, sometimes they'll say to me, and I have cried at work, so it's not like I'm not judging, right? And they'll say to me something like, um, you know, uh, I'm sorry. And I was like, you don't need to be sorry. Let it out. Let it out. It's horrible. Don't leave it in. Let it out. And if you really get that boo-hoo out and let it go, and then you're like, you have no more cry. That it's liberating, right? Now, this used to happen to me probably every couple of years. I'd have this, like, my husband I would be talking to him, and all of a sudden he'd be a little like intense, and then I would blow up, and then he'd go, "Where'd that come from?" And I go, "2 years." you just hit me wrong. 2 years. You said it's all coming out. And but then I finally realized the issue was this fear I had and worry. And I say to women often more than anybody, because men, this is a generalization. Men can be brave with less perfection. Women worry about perfection, right? And so take a risk. You might be wrong. You might mess up. You might have to go in purgatory. You might have to come back from the ashes, but it's all very doable, right? As long as you don't let it happen again. Don't be the victim that lets it happen again. Don't be the person who says, well, I'm glad Katie is now the one in the doghouse because now I don't look so bad. I mean, that's all kind of silly talk, right? But if you take a risk for the right reasons, you are a great team member. If you thought about a lot of things that just didn't work out, my question to people off, what do you learn from that? And how do you prevent your team member from making that same mistake? How do you prevent the organization from being exposed to that risk? That to me is like the biggest learning in the world. And so these things about risk, from where I sit now, again, I've been out here a long time. So in some ways it's because, again, I've had a lot to see, but every gift I can give all of you is the sooner you can be comfortable in taking risk and not bottle up your emotions, make your comments not through venom or frustration or trying to get back at someone, trying to make something happen in the right way so that your energies and your good intelligence flows to the organization in a way that's constructive. That's a way of letting out things that can go bottled up for a really long time. And I tell women, be brave. Stop worrying and get it out. Don't worry that somebody might try to box you out. I've seen the most laid back people finally go, excuse me, I wasn't quite finished. If I could finish, then I would really appreciate that. So oftentimes, if you can just do it right, even people who are bullies go, and you just gotta put yourself at the table. Don't always go to the back of the room. Don't always go to the side. If there's a space, just sometimes go in there and then really, really engage and take that risk. Take it. Don't be afraid of it. Embrace it. And it's a funny thing. The moment you can do it, and then you can do it built on knowledge foundation, great teamwork, it's almost liberating. You'll make less mistakes because you'll have more collaboration, and people will talk to you more, and they'll include you, and you'll get to know stuff at the beginning instead at the end. And so it's a tough thing to say. It's something to see. It's more ambiguous, but I've seen it happen over and over and over again. And that risk taking is needed. It's needed.
Thank you. I have another question. Your actions take precedence and impact directly to those 3,000 people at CPS, as you mentioned, and almost can say 2 million in San Antonio. It is an enormous responsibility on your shoulders. How do you tackle the feeling of fear of being the CEO of CPS, where a lot of people depend on your actions and decisions?
That sounded a whole lot heavier than I like to let myself think through, but it's true. It's true. I mean, even I have worried, right? I have daughters. One lives in Houston. One lives in Colorado. I haven't seen my younger daughter in Colorado for over a year. My older daughter just moved back to Houston, and I have to think. I would love to go see her, but I have a job here, and I don't want to make her sick, and I don't want to come back and make my employees sick. I mean, that to me is something that I can't sacrifice right now without a better plan. So I use technology, things like this, FaceTime or both of them, and talk. And it's enough now because we do feel like we're going to see each other again. And even my father-in-law, I've told my employees this. My father-in-law is 81, and we just lost my mother-in-law last year. I haven't seen him in months because I don't want to make him sick. So we drop stuff off on the doorstep. I call him on the phone. We have a conversation. As much as it's odd now, in some ways I'm more connected because, like now I feel like if I feel like I should call and pick up the phone, I'm going to pick up the phone now versus always thinking I have more time and always thinking that I could do it tomorrow. And then when I do talk to people, it means so much more. My spidey senses are up. I'm paying attention to what they say. And I think that's made me more present, even though the physical distance has left. And I can't remember where I heard this, but, someone said, it's not social distancing, it's physical distancing. Socially, you can't let this be a reason for not to do that outreach and tell people how you really feel and don't let things go by. So that said, knowing all that, I do feel like I have a big responsibility. So I don't test it. My husband, I feel like I'm I don't know. He bundles me up. I have a scarf and I've got my glasses on. He wanted me to wear goggles. I said no, but I have big glasses on. I have gloves, and but he's telling me, Paula, he even knows he's really careful because he doesn't want to make me sick, make my people sick. So it's a big responsibility, but the reason why it's not too much is because it does matter. Providing people power in this community, they may not think about it a lot, but it's so critical. The moment they don't have it, I mean, that's what end of world movies are about, not having power, right? That's people don't assume it, but I understand it. I have been blessed in so many ways, and the things that I've learned, the people I've met. My job is a privilege. My service is a privilege, and my ability to keep reminding myself that is the job, and that is the responsibility, and I must set the example. And I can't ask my people to do something I wouldn't do. Yeah, I have to be able to say, I need you to stay safe. I'm gonna do it with you. I'm gonna do what you got to do because it matters, and that's okay. Again, I still believe we will ultimately have a vaccine. This too shall pass. The way we respond will change and morph and be better. The way we think about prevention will be improved. We are learning as a globe the things that we need to know. So I do it because it matters, and I know in the long run, it's just the thing that I'm supposed to do. I'm one person. I have one life. There will be many people after me, and so this is the role that I now have that I must embrace. take seriously.
I like that. Well, we are actually coming up on the end of our session, so I think we have time for one question.
Okay, I'll try to be short.
Yes, I think, okay, yeah. All right, the question is, who do you look up to for inspiration or mentorship?
It isn't a short question, but I'll make it short. Look, so a couple of things. My biggest mentors in my life have been men. My boss, and ultimately, again, although he was hard on me, he was one of my best mentors. Another gentleman by the name of Ken Jackson. You know, I've been fortunate. But as I sit back and think about, I've just been blessed, and who I miss the most, and who's always in my head all the time, are my parents, who I don't have anymore. They were simple people, not extremely accomplished, really, really bright, underprivileged in many, many ways. Values were just right. And so I have those memories that are with me all the time. And I feel fortunate that I was their child. And so every time I think about how you have to treat someone, no matter who they are, that's what I look up to, because they weren't impressed with people's monies or title or anything like that. They too were the people who probably were overlooked and could spot good character in a moment. And so their ability to do that and teach me not to lead with, who cares, I'm the CEO, whatever. They always taught me, you're just a person like everybody else. And so those views that they have given me are with me. And I put that as my foundation. And then all of the people who have given me jewels along the way, a lot of them men, but just really good people. That's what I look up to.
Sounds very humble, like they're very humble. I like that too. So thank you. We are at exactly about 1 o'clock. So, right. I mean, I appreciate all the information that you have given, and just thank you for joining us today for this virtual presentation. So
yeah, it worked.
It did.
Thanks,
it did.
ERCOT.
Technical.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.